batch mode, batch mode, batch mode, batch mode. Yay! All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the batch mode on the Rowstore session. Or as some people call it, the fast is getting even faster. So please silence your cell phones unless you want me to come over and attend them, because I will definitely do that. Please explore everything that PAS has to offer. Online resources, newsletters. Who is a member of their local user group here? Like, OK, those of you who are not, you should be going. It's free meetings, great presenters. Some of the top presenters here from the PAS Summit, they are to give you this same, very same sometimes content at the local level. You don't have to travel to Seattle, and it's not one time per year. So SQL Saturday, who attended SQL Saturday here? OK, free Saturday. I mean, you spending the Saturday, but you don't have to pay. You'll get great content there, and become a volunteer, participate in all the resources that PAS has to offer. All right, so my name is Niko Neugebauer. I come from a distant country of Portugal. Blah, 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 blah. I like column store indexes. That's the only my claim to fame. I wrote a couple of articles. Well, my passion for batch execution mode and my bothering year after year of Microsoft, like, give me the batch mode, but outside of the column store indexes, it comes from somewhere, and there are some other resources. All right, so in my imagination, that's my real photo, photoshopped pretty heavily, but this is how I imagine myself. And this is how I always thought that all the other people view me, especially Microsoft. All right, so today's agenda with that, to more serious stuff, because there are a lot of serious stuff, I was told. Okay, so batch mode on the Rowstore is on the agenda as the first point. The second point is batch mode on the Rowstore. The third one is, of course, hot batch mode on good old Rowstore, right? So pretty exciting, I would say. Those of you who came for XML indexes, that's a wrong session. I'm sorry. So once upon a time, there is no video, but I like the picture. Okay. A company making the most awesome source database products in the world came to me, that company, and they tell me, God, my clicker went a little, and they ask me, so, Niko, tell us what you want, what you really, really want, right? And those of you who are old enough, they already know what's coming, right? It's batch mode, right? Right? And I said, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want, right? I said, batch mode on the Rowstore, right? That's what I want. So, and I did that at that point. And year after year, I had to repeat the same story, what I want, for some reasons. And I was expecting the Microsoft, when they ask me, they would go like, yes, Mr. Prime Minister, yes, of course, it will be delivered, not in the next version, but in the next cumulative update. We just make it work. And I started waiting, right? So when SQL Server 2012 came, I felt like, probably not happening. That was me with 2014 for some reason. This is myself with 2016 version, because I was already demanding. I'm like, I was talking to the team, I'm like, get me the batch mode on the Rowstore. I'm getting impatient. And the day I was told it was coming, I simply did not believe it was coming, right? I was like, nah, you're kidding me, right? And finally, when I came to my senses, I said, show me the money, right? And Microsoft goes like, yeah, when it's ready. That was my feelings about that, right? When you wait for a couple of years for the most awesome feature, because that will be the feature, I'm like, after that you can leave and go to any other session, but some people will migrate to 2019 and suddenly will get faster. like, without doing anything. And Microsoft said, like, well, when it's ready, when we have a public CDP to share. I was like, I was waited. I felt like this, actually. Every single minute, I think I was sending emails to the developers like, are we there yet? And are we there yet? All right, so, and then when the day came, I was partying, absolutely. I opened a nice bottle of Portuguese wine, and that's enough for this slideware. And let's start with the content. So what is the batch execution mode? A batch mode is also known as a special one. That's a European reference. Those of you who has a different opinion about what football is, they will probably say, like, who is this guy, whatever. Anyway, so why don't we switch to the real stuff? And I'll run you a query, some random query. I have a couple of databases, of demo databases, but like not really interesting. Whatever I run, all of the code will be available, but the code itself, it doesn't matter. I don't do any special tricks, or I'm just doing some basic stuff. So I assume all of you have read the abstract, right? The basic requirements. Who has never heard about what an execution plan is? Okay, who has never seen an execution plan? That's good, that's beautiful. All of you are very competent people, and I'll run a query, whatever happens, and good. And now the latency or the network will kill me, of course. All right. I was praying to the demo gods, and I think they listened precisely to what I was praying. All right. It was all planned, of course. Don't worry. That's fine. That's something called network connections. All of you have seen this situation, and because don't worry, I have a plan for the plan. Okay. So it doesn't work, it says. Let's restart it, and now it works. My password is, as always, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Maybe 7. I don't really remember. It's just, you know. So, all right. So now we're online, totally executing. Beautiful. Like, don't care about anything but this stuff. As one of the program managers said that when he was presenting the batch mode on the Rowstore at Microsoft's booth, he said, we'll ship you the XML even for you to dig into this stuff. All right, so have you ever seen those beautiful plans? Yeah? So how do we read the execution plans? From left to right or from right to left? I couldn't understand. So left to right, yes? No, right to left. People read from right to left. OK, very good. How do the execution plan are executed? From right to left or from left to right? From left to right. That's beautiful. You're very smart people. So I assume that it's basically like starts, whatever, initializes, and then you see those errors. Have you seen ever fat errors? Like really big, like a lot of data. And we imagine that we read the data, and then we ship it from one iterator to another, and then they do the magic tricks, you know, the Oompa Loompas do the job, and they ship it, and they make the joins and group by and sorts. Beautiful, right? And then the user gets the result, right? Right? So actually not. Every iterator implements 3 virtual functions, at least, which are begin, end, and get next. I call it get next row, because it's a row execution mode. And in reality, those beautiful errors can be substituted for the unicorns if Microsoft ever decides to do such a plugin for visualizing the execution plans. In reality, every single iterator will ship and exchange 1 row at a time. And so I need 3 volunteers to show you an execution plan. Hugo, you are the first volunteer. Thank you very much. Joe, would you be able to come to the stage, and I need to run a query. I have some data to process. And I need a third volunteer. You go, sir, please come on stage. Or we can do it if I go in front. So, but you can go here, line up. So basically, it's like this. What is your name, sir? Vern. OK. All right. So we have these 3 iterators. You can visualize the execution play. We have the data, which will be right beside you, sir. And we have the select, which is Joysack, the gentleman who is doing the program management for the batch execution mode on Rowstore. We have a great specialist, Hugo Cornelis, who is doing a great session on the hash match. It's a 3-hour session, right? 2.5, just 2.5. And you, sir, I remember you worked for Microsoft, I believe, no?
I'm independent.
You're independent.
I had a session on statistics.
Oh, have you had your session already? So Vern has delivered a great session on the statistics. And so right now we will run and execute the query. So let's do like this, Joe. So I will be the user. I say select star from dim employee, and you will be initialized. When you initialize, you go like, begin. Yeah, go, begin. OK, great. So do you have the data to deliver to the user? Not really. OK, so you need to ask Hugo for the data, like get next.
Begin.
Get
next.
OK.
Begin.
Do you have the data? Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, no data. Oh. Get next. Begin.
So here is the data, and you can give the data. No, you don't have to. It's like these are a kind of 8 kilobyte pages, different colors. That's what the inside the storage agent is actually happening. They paint every single page with different color, right? So here is the page. You can deliver the data to Hugo.
What am I supposed to say?
So take it.
Take it.
Okay. So our sort iterator, what it will do, it will order it. And then it will deliver probably to the next. Oh, no, you're blocking iterator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get next. Here you go. Get next.
The sort is very efficient.
Get next. Here you go. Get next. No more? Ah.
No panic. It's very efficient algorithm, trust me.
He wrote it. It's very efficient.
All right? You need to ask for get next.
Oh,
Otherwise,
get next, please. Get next.
Here you go.
Get next.
Here you go.
Get next.
Here you go.
it's done. And just a second, just a second. So this is a raw execution mode. Now you can claim that you have seen the actual execution plan, you know? Just because you see them here, they're not necessarily the actual execution plan, if you know what I mean. All right, so now let's process the same query, but in batch execution mode. So basically, to my understanding, you just start, and you can ask for the data. But batch execution mode is like a factory. They do the processing in batches between 64 and up to 900 rows at a time, which will be a little bit more efficient, I would say. So let's start it. Begin, get data.
Begin, get data. Here you go.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
He can do the sorting also with the batch mode.
Advanced, optimized. Here you go.
Woohoo! Victory! Thank you very much, Vern, Hugo, and Joe. Brilliant, brilliant. This is the best query plan execution I have ever seen in my entire life. And I have seen a couple of those, right? All right. So how do you see if the batch execution mode is kicking in, right? You need to call one of those three gentlemen because they are the owners of the batch execution mode. So I think I forgot something called Zoom It, and I think I need to start it. Just give me a second. All right, because sometimes we might be needing it. Okay, yes. So here on every iterator, as a matter of fact, we have, since 2012, when the column store indexes appeared in SQL Server, we have received this beautiful two actual and estimated execution mode. And this is how we get the raw execution mode idea. There is some artifact, in my personal, not so humble opinion. I was told that there is no difference starting with 2016 anymore. And if you can, please ask Microsoft to remove the estimated execution mode, because it just pollutes already pretty heavy visualization. So how would you know if the plan is running in batch execution mode? Besides over 3 years asking, begging, and threatening, we don't have a visualization, because if you like this idea, please upvote there is an item, user voice for that. I would like to look at the execution plan, and practical execution plan, they have a couple more, maybe dozens more of the iterators, and be able to see which iterator has a batch execution mode and not. And because I think lightning is fast, putting a little lightning on the iterator would be able to help us to visualize and understand which iterators are running in the batch execution mode. So if I will pick up some query, a basic one, and for whatever reason, I will run this query. And of course, probably didn't warm up, but it did. So let's take a look at the execution plan. And I'm just delivering a very simple query. Very beautiful. It's parallel. And if we go here, we can see two unicorns at the same time. First of all, we see that we started the real demo in the meantime. We're running the Rowstore. This was besides the couple of possible hacks, which I will mention here. In the early version until 2019, you could not have the batch execution mode if there would be no column store indexes in your execution plan or consideration of it. And you can see that the estimated and actual execution modes are pretty fast, or apparently fast. We run with the batch execution mode. This is for those of you, anybody works here with the column store indexes? Oh, good people. You know that feeling when you look at the execution plan and you're like, yeah, it's fast. Now we have for the slow storage, old storage, with all the respect, of course, but we have the batch execution mode. So it's like, it's awesome, okay? Really awesome. You have a picture even, when and where to see. What is the actual number of batches? Because we group, or the query processor groups the data and these executions in batches, you can see how many of them are. I never actually needed this information, because I don't know if I can measure like the relative number. Maybe in the trillions it will make a sense, but I wouldn't know. Anyway, we're cutting some of the content. It's basically another explanation that instead of invoking, a lot of time the same function, we will pass more information. This is like for the programmers, we pass an array. Because a lot of time, what CPU is doing overhead. It's repeating the same function. It needs to go to the same address. And if you do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 times, it's OK for a small OLTP query. But if you're doing these 20 trillion times in a query, you're spending large seconds or minutes like invoking, not doing any actual work. And Microsoft did a great job in eliminating it, the unnecessary operations. So I gotta say, well, they did an awesome job. I am a fan. I love being able to control what's going on. And we can control the batch execution mode, first of all, as all of you should know. Since 2014, Microsoft started putting the improvement, actually 12 also, but mostly 14. The newest features, they're hidden under the compatibility level of your database. So you upgraded to 2019, you're running with 140 compatibility level of 2017 or any older, you will not get batch execution mode on Rowstore. You need to upgrade to 150, and you'll get more features as well. Then we have something, one of my favorite features is database scope configurations, right? They are not on the SSMS, but you can Google them, find them, and use them. So you can switch it on or switch it off. Brilliant. Not enough. We have the query hint. I can switch it on. I set compatibility level 150. I keep my batch mode on Rowstore on. But on that particular query, for some reasons, it doesn't give me any favor. It gives me a headache. I can use the option use hint disallow batch mode, and I can shut it off on the query level execution. So you have the total control. It works also the other way around, that we can set the batch mode off and then use hint allow batch mode. All right? So let's go back to the demo. Any questions so far? None? Yes, go ahead, sir. So the question or the comment was, there were some ways of helping the query optimizer to gain the possibility of achieving batch execution mode. We are on the record. Let me see. We have a demo for that. All right? Oh, sorry, I'm blind. Yes? Right. So the comment was, some tables are big, some tables are small. And the answer for that is the query optimizer is pretty smart. And we'll go into details. There are heuristics and something wonderful, an insight for anyone attempting batch mode on column store or on row store. We cannot see the whole tree of the decisions. We can understand through this extended event what were the reasons, and I will be showing them. If the query optimizer decides to consider the batch mode for this query, and you have to have a couple of thousands, tens of thousands of rows for it even to start considering the batch execution mode for your query. So it is a cost-based decision. And on this note, I'm jumping a little bit ahead. If you feel like there are no reasons for you for not getting the batch execution mode, run the extended events. To understand, we have the possibility of getting really a pretty deep insight on the decision tree, and use the hints if you don't like it. But if you have a query which will run with nested loops, for example, just a basic example, nested loops do not support batch execution mode. So you will not get the advantage, and you will not be able to have it. Does this answer a little bit, kind of? So I'm not understanding the question. You would like to get a manual adjustment for the plan? So on smaller tables, I would say from my limited experience, you would not have to worry very much. Even if the decision will be wrong of running with the batch mode, it will be too fast for you to notice the difference. Batch mode, by default, of course, requires more resources. But if you have worked or played with the column store indexes, you would be able to see that on the relevant cases, you spend less resources and you run faster, which is kind of strange. But we'll just wait a little bit and we'll get into a little bit more deeper insight. So let's run some, any more questions? Okay, yes, sir. I can't hear you. Sorry, can you repeat it? I can't hear you. Okay. Okay. So, okay. Thank you. So, the question is, in what situation would I not want to use the batch execution mode? If I process huge amounts of data, huge, like over 1 million rows, generally, I would always want the batch execution mode. The limitations would be like in every optimization, it's a trade-off, right? So if you're on the limit of the necessary resources, such as memory, and you have millions of connections, and you need to even scale higher, maybe batch execution mode is a bad idea, right? Because you consume more resources on smaller queries. This would be the situation. So purely OLTP workload, which have like small tables, a couple of thousands of rows, and huge amounts of users, come on. You do not want to start like a real process. If you buy a Ferrari or any fast car, Mustang, and you go in a small European town with, going up and down, and you try to go 200 miles per hour, what will happen? It's like you will not even reach 30 miles per hour because you start going up, you need to turn left or right. So the same thing with the batch execution mode. It needs space, right? We are in the situation with the raw execution mode for the Rowstore is we go into the NASCAR, and instead of getting a great car, we take the bicycle and we start woohoo very fast, while we can go significantly faster. So every time you see that, you have a lot of constraints and you cannot speed up because it has a warm-up time if effectively. But this is basically the more OLTP, more granular, more smaller queries and smaller tables you get, these are the reasons for me to start thinking maybe batch mode is not very much needed. Does this answer your questions? Okay. Good. All right. In any case, after the session, come over. We can talk about your questions. So this small table, TPCH, 10 gigabytes. I want my demos to finish on time. 60 million rows, OK? Nothing special. And I want to ensure that my queries are running with compatibility level of 150. So let's run this query. Don't pay attention to the number of seconds. My virtual machine sometimes gives a different number. And these are the things we are looking for. OK, 12 seconds. Was it running batch mode? Conceptually, yes. So you can see it's very difficult here to work with the mouse, but batch execution mode. And multiple operators, of course, worked with batch execution mode. Even the sort was executed with the batch execution mode. So it's really, the query was really efficient. And one of the signs that generally, for those of you who are not very familiar with the optimization, is the sign that you are using efficiently your system, or maybe not, it's CPU going very high, 100% typically. Okay? So if I'm still able, you could see that I went really high, the CPU. So this one was fast, right? Let's do the same query, but under 140 compatibility level. and I expect it, even though it will do, in this case, it also will spend all the CPU. But in this spending of the CPU, it has millions and millions of times invoking and communicating between every single iterator. So we're throwing away the necessary resources. So in this case, as you can see, I have got the result in 18 seconds. So we have won 50% from 18 to 12 seconds just because of the compatibility level. That's a huge difference. And it's a single query. And it's a good query. And if you see, don't expect the execution plan forms and shapes to be exactly the same, because it's a cost-based optimization. I will lose my voice repeating it. There are gazillions, virtually gazillions of possible execution plans, and query optimizer team, they shuffling magical unicorns in order to do the best choice possible. So, and if there is an error, please let them know. Don't go around and you say, well, it doesn't work. Submit a support ticket. Use the conferences as this one to give the feedback. And do something very different, please. Just for me, a favor. I deliver you a session, you do me a favor. Go to the engineers. Find the engineers. Find the PMs, manager, VP, I don't care. If there is something you like about the product you use, go and say them thank you. Because they just get, I hope it will be edited, just the shitty feedback. It's like your users, for those of you who are DBAs, the developers, they will never say, thank you, it runs faster. Thank you, you saved my bottom, because this query right now, I'm not getting fired for writing slow stuff. And the developers can think about this, that the dashboard users, those who are consuming, they will never go, yeah, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. You know, be the kind people. This is the community conference, and do something kind, please. All right? All right, so basic demo even went pretty well. OK, any questions so far? All right. I had something, a file which is called compared to old hacks. And I will not go into the 2016 style. I'll show you how you could have, or some of us did, used something we call the column store batch mode injection. So let's do the following. I'm here for the dummy table, of course. I will create it. I have a C1 int, whatever, and I have a clustered column store index. And even worse, I will not insert any data into it. So let's run the query. So ensure that the database scope configuration also enables the batch execution mode, and run the query. So the execution time were saved from 8-core VM, but because I was juggling with 19 and 17 yesterday, this will take a little bit more time. And I'm even forcing allow batch execution mode. So my execution time was 11 seconds. I'll run it again, just making sure. And I will substitute it live. It's like live blogging. Warm up. Oops. So it was 6.8 seconds. OK? This is totally batch execution mode on Rowstore. This is 2019. So what I will do, I will set it off. So if I will re-execute this query, it will take significantly longer because we will not have the batch execution mode, right? So we kind of, like, we are in 2017, 16, or 14 space. And now I will do some little trick. I like writing some strange queries. That's my same query, but I'm doing this. Left outer join with the dummy table on impossible condition. That's it. Just because I can. Let's run the query. And if it will be faster, then I will have to do something about my presentation. Yes, it's 7 already. OK, got it. It works. Thank you. Got it. 9 seconds. This is the injection. How would I know that I injected it? Let's rerun the query and take a look at the execution plan. Remember, I have disabled the batch execution mode, so it will not kick in immediately. And and if I see it's running in row, this one is running in row execution mode, right? It's row. But this one is row. This one is batch. But I don't have the batch execution mode. It's just because I joined with a table that has a column store index starting with 2014, the stuff you are using. You can inject the batch execution mode now only on the developer editions or on the developer station. Don't use it in the production, unless you test it. I confess that I've been using it for many years, mainly when I would come to a new client and I would start talking about the column store indexes. They're like, give us a proof. And I would inject the batch execution mode, show them the result between the row execution mode and the batch execution mode, and say, this is just a start. Would you like to get faster? And they're like, show us more. So this is how it works. There is a different way. Itzhak Ben-Gan, the greatest T-SQL specialist of all time, has written about this. If in 2016 and later versions, you can create a non-clustered column store index with a filter, with impossible filter. For example, some ID is less than 0, when you know that ID cannot be less than 0. So it will be empty, but a potential presence of the column store indexes will make queries run in a batch execution mode. The huge difference, and this is why it will never, ever, ever be as fast as batch mode on the Rowstore, the execution itself. So right now I can rerun the query. I don't need a dummy. It's not very family-friendly way, of course, to say something about the table, calling it dummy. But there are books for dummies. So, all right. So it's 6, 7 seconds. If I go here, I can see something. It's a similar plan. You see that the shape has changed just a little bit, right? I had another iterator here, but here, the index scan itself is done with the batch execution mode. That's the difference. You will not be able to get the index scan with the batch execution mode injection. It's impossible. So 2019 is all the way to go. And you do not have to write some stupid stuff because one of your developers, somebody will look at your query and say, ha, 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 we delete this join because it makes no sense, right? And you will find it out later when your boss will come, what the heck has happened in production, right? So, with greater power comes some certain responsibility. Yeah, questions? So if I understand correctly, the question is, it's just one iterator, because all the rest potentially will be executing with the batch execution mode. Yeah, so it's like conceptually, the huge difference is the kicking off, the batch execution mode, the consideration, which will be different, and the scanning of the indexes. This will be. When I injected, it was running in the row execution mode, the index scan.
So there's no benefits.
Sorry?
So when you injected it, that one operator.
So it started only with the compute scalar or hash join, hash match. It starts later. So we lose with the. After that, it will be batch. So the query processor itself, it's like there is a separation. I think that the success, why it's so successful, and I'm betting on it, it will be one of the biggest things of the 2019, is because the design, to my understanding, my knowledge, it was basically let's enable the initialization, the analysis, the heuristics of the starting of the batch execution mode, and all the rest, we just allow the batch mode to run like for the column store indexes. Okay? More questions? No. All right. Because I'm being slow, I start to worry a little bit. So I have something like a let's go a little bit deeper. Batch mode heuristics, amazing. This is hands down one of my favorite features. Contrary to the most reasonable people, I love extended events, okay? So they're easy to use, they are over 10 years old, very comfortable. This one is awesome. Applies to column store or to the row store using the batch mode. This one will tell you if it's running or if it's not running your query, the batch execution mode, and it will give you the reasons. This image by itself, it will tell you all the story that you need to know. So is query plan using the batch processing, yes or no? So you can really do the diagnostics. Was it enabled? Was it enabled unconditionally? I would say forced, but is it enabled by heuristics? So the analysis, the cost-based optimization, does it recommend you? And then, so was batch mode ever considered? Maybe if you're running like 10,000 rows in your table, you will see like, was batch mode ever considered? No, go away, get some sleep. Interesting global aggregation, interesting table. It's amount, it's a cardinality estimation in my my books. And Joel, feel free to correct me. People are listening. Okay, so interesting join. Join that will do a lot of CPU work. And if it's not, you will not get the batch execution mode. Nary join, N-ary, it means there are 3 or more tables doing significant amount of CPU work. Window aggregate. So this one is absolutely amazing. If you're doing window calculation, windowing function, Itzik Ben-Gan is talking a lot about them and how you can do awesome stuff with them. It just, yeah, batch mode will potentially kick in. And I've seen really, really a lot of things that we tested that window aggregate is a very easy way of helping the query optimizer to do the decision. Okay, total batch cost and total ignored cost. And let's do the demo part. So let's count the rows against the customer table. And let's do it on a 1 GB table. But before that, I have the slides not, but I already set up my extended event, which I call full batch. I'll start it up, like start me up, and I watch live data. I'm not filtering on anything on this demo station, so just there will be some strange queries appearing as usual, but let's run the query. Okay? Whoa, okay. So, is batch processing enabled? What does heuristic says? And was it ever considered for the start? Anything else? So you should be able to see that my query, because the dim customer on TPCH 1 GB is rather small table, and I'm doing a simple select, what is the reason on earth even need to consider, and query optimizer is incredibly effective in this case. It says, go away, more or less. Then we run on the 10 GB table the same query. Ignore, please, the other ones. This one is the right one. And you see true, 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 true. and I got the batch execution mode. So it has to do a lot of times with the amount of data and the amount of work. And so jumping between those two, you can see this part. I love. So total batch cost is 0.16 query bucks. It's like absolutely nothing. And the total cost of the considered without the batch mode would be 76. So it would be a pretty slow query. And query cost-based optimizer, it considers, and it's not like, oh, batch mode will be very cool. Yes, and then they will think, they will choose the most efficient plan, which is based on the total costs. So if the total cost of the batch execution mode plan will be higher than the raw mode execution plan, you will get a raw execution plan. In this case, we cut out of 76, we get 75.99 improvement to a very efficient execution plan. I mean, when does Microsoft give us the tools to go with this and get the insight about exact reasons? Never. I say never. Okay? Count star, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay, let's do some aggregation query. I will even run it for the second time. Well, you know, I don't have to feed it very much. It's very, very trivial. And let's see it. And you can see it's all true. And what it says, that it found an interesting table in this case. First, because the cardinality estimation for this table, and it has found an interesting global aggregate. And that's a function that was actually used for the hash matching to group and to calculate. Beautiful. I mean, gives us another insight on how things are decided. And in the big bad queries, well, you know, it's sometimes, if we can understand, just have a little bit insight within the seconds for a reason of what happened, I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, so this one, you can see that the uplan affecting actions allowed, it says false. Why? Because my zoom foo is very weak. I use a hint disallow batch execution mode. So I said, I'm not allowing. Why didn't I get the batch execution mode? Because I said so, right? Take a look at this query. I'm taking top 20. This is rather a simple query, right? Okay, I'm doing the unbound proceeding, but will I get the batch execution mode? Sort, window aggregate. That's beautiful. Batch execution mode, ladies and gentlemen. I'm doing top 20. I mean, I'm doing much more. I'm doing the order. But the reason in this query is found interesting window aggregate. So you can understand, you can have really great insight on what's going on. Interesting join between two tables. Any questions so far? I hope that this query will finish in a reasonable amount of time. All right, here we go. So, an interesting join we have. And you can see that there is no interesting and array join, but an interesting join indeed. And finding interesting doesn't mean automatically gives you the batch execution mode. But in this case, we just went to the total cost 595. It sounds like an advertisement, isn't it? You know, winning over 970 of the potential spending. So this query, it took a certain amount of time. If this would run with the raw execution mode, I will still be like looking at and praying that my query would come to an end. This one is a TPCH style query. You can see I didn't even rewrite this 92 last century type of the joins, and you can see that it will get the interesting and array join still running. I think it's this one. Yes. So in this case, I don't have an interesting join. I have an interesting and array join. And this is not a challenge. You do not have to test how big n can be. I had a query recently, some developer from a client said, we have 33 joins. Can you help us? I looked at this and I said, no. I'm not a medic, so I'm not a doctor, really. I can't help. So I could run more stuff, but it's basically trivial. You understand it. Please play with these features. You should have been playing with them in the CDPs and RRCs. Give the feedback. Say thank you to people who did it. All right? There is another one, batch mode scan on Rowstore. So this one will help you understand if somebody's hacking into the batch mode or you are running it. Because this one is the scan on the Rowstore. This is how you get your index scans. And of course, if you are doing an index seek, reading a couple of rows, most probably you do not need a batch mode on this iterator, and you probably won't get it. So, not so good news, maybe? But I have to correct. So this is TPCH. I didn't run it on the RTM. I will have to update it. I had no time, didn't want to risk as well. But I can tell you that with some exceptions, all of the queries are just running faster. And that's an awesome job that they did, really. And from version to version, even in CTPs, I have seen variations, large variations. And overall, I can say I can't be happier about the result. Because we as developers, as BI, we just run queries and they will get faster. That's what will happen. Some of the differences, for example, the query 21 on the smaller TPCH 10 gigabytes, you see it performed worse in my case. But when we scale to the 100 gigabytes, we start winning. So the larger you're on the multi-terabyte, you will be getting really, really faster. That's my expectation. Smaller the tables are, and in some cases, for TPCH queries, I was not able to get the batch execution mode. I guess there was nothing interesting. So do we need the column store at all? Oh, Jake, you think not? We don't need column store?
I'm shaking my head at the picture.
Yes. That's how I feel. When I was asked this question, that's how I felt. I wanted to do this trick, and I wanted to run away in a very, very weird way. Because you do need the column store indexes. They are still awesome. I don't know, all the headers, for some reason in my presentation, in this mode, they don't appear. But basically, what is different? The title of this slide is and what is different. So you will not have the column store compression, right, on the Rowstore. And column store compression runs circles around the page compression. Typically, exceptions exist, but you would expect 2 to 3 times better. You do not have advanced storage engine optimization, period. You do not. Who knows what advanced storage engine optimizations are? Okay, good. It's good time for a demo. So I'm not even showing you bad performing queries because I want to be nice. All right, so let's get to 150 and let's run those queries. And let's see how much time it takes. I'm doing the count star against the same table, line item, but just a CCI, clustered columns for copy. So pretty fast, right? 4 seconds in total. What is it, 60 million rows? Are we happy? All right, so how about this? Are you entertained? Are you thinking that the column store indexes cannot go fast enough? We can try to get below the 10 milliseconds, but that depends on the different services that Microsoft Azure sometimes runs or Windows executes in my VM without me knowing. No, it doesn't happen actually. I'm kidding. So, but it's no comparison. If we are looking at the execution plans, that's 2016 feature, 2016 plus. Come on, finish it. Batch mode for the Rowstore. It's still fast, but I'm just saying the column store stuff. You see how many rows we've got here? We've got 0 rows. I don't like it, I confess. I would prefer 1 row. But it says that the storage engine, while doing the column store index scan, it did all the aggregation itself, the storage engine, without putting into the memory and doing this, within the execution plan. The storage engine column store index scan did the necessary calculation. That's why it was so fast. And I don't know, I will speculate that the row store will never get these features. It makes no sense. But maybe SQL Server 2021, I don't know. But I guess it makes less sense on the row store than on column store. Or maybe I like column store too much and I want a competition. So another query, a couple of queries, something more real than just a star, like some aggregations. And the global aggregations, they are simply much better. Okay? Oh, come on. Questions, please.
Standard edition, everything.
Sorry?
Standard edition, everything.
Never ask any IT person about the choice of the edition, I think. I don't think that the program management or developers have they can give their valuable feedback. Have you ever heard the phrase like, thank you for the valuable feedback. We will naturally consider that. I think that's what they get from the marketing, right? So no, bad news. I'll tell them. It's enterprise edition only. It's performance. And I had a friend, Milos Radivojevic from bwin, who would, after it was publicly announced, he virtually on Twitter was crying on my shoulder. He wanted to see that everybody would benefit from it. Well, not always happens.
So we'll do the injection.
The gentleman said you can do the injection. I didn't say that, right? I'm just washing my hand, pretty clean. So there is one feature which I will argue it's worth, in some cases, migrating from 2016 to 2017 on the basis of this feature, which was basically nowhere documented. But they did a very beautiful job. So let's do this. Let's run our query. And let's see once again the difference in the execution time. 56, 2,337. And if we look at the execution plan, you know what would happen? And actually, you can see that the first one is even running in parallel. And actually, it's wrong, because I think it didn't save, it crashed. Let me just, yes. Because this one should not be like this. Let me rerun. Just that query. Yes, OK. That was what I just inspected. Never run alter the resource properties and reconfigure in the same statement. Lesson learned. So this one, what is the problem? If you see one time in the aggregation query stream aggregate, expect that things do not go so fine. You see, row execution mode, of course, streaming, row execution mode. What is the problem? If we take a look at this one, the optimization level is trivial. That's why I raised a little bit the threshold for parallelism to 50. And the cost of this one is 17 or whatever. No, subtree cost 24. So below. If you are getting a trivial optimization, you will not get the batch execution mode. And that is the problem on 2016 and earlier versions. What about this one? It has the same cost. This query would, on 2016, it would run slow because it would not be fully optimized. It is fully optimized because Microsoft just did an if, it definitely, and testing and whatever, documentation design, but they put the conditioning. If the query, to my understanding, if the query is running, the execution plan has column store indexes, the query will be fully optimized. And that's how we get the batch execution mode. Do you want all of your queries on OLTP to be fully optimized? No, you don't. So you will not get, there will be cases where you will not get batch execution mode, even though you should have had it. OK? And column store indexes will be winning. They're winning from 2017. Actually, from 2012, in a family-friendly way, right? OK. I think I'm actually coming to the end of my presentation, and we have like 15 minutes. But I'll get you grab a coffee if you don't mind, or answer the questions. So no advanced storage engine optimization, no local or global aggregation, so on. I have to say, some better predicate pushdowns, null expressions, they are not as fine as they should be on the column store indexes. This is where the Rowstore can get some advantages. Strings, they did a great job. It's still Enterprise Edition, string predicate pushdown, still Enterprise Edition feature. Hackathon, yeah. Who loves Hackathon? Please raise your hand. Yes, there are 5 people, 6 people. So 7, God. I have never seen so many people loving an awesome feature. You should be. Anybody here is doing ETL? More than 7 people. Did you know that you can use the Hackathon schema-only table as the staging tables? And if you use them, and I use the opportunity, go to the Microsoft people and say, why don't we put a column store index on the in-memory schema-only table? It will be awesome. They need this feedback. All right, so let's start with a little bit some of the limitations. In this case, first of all, I'll talk about lobs. Who loves lobs? Some people think even putting lobs in the data warehouse in fact tables is a good idea. I constantly find those people. I try to be positive. I say, you'll do a better job next time. You will. All right, so if I run this query, and I have here, I already prepared, it doesn't really matter that it doesn't return any result. I have here all the necessary stuff, right? The thing is, my query here does not get a batch execution mode. Why? Because if you have any mention of lobs within your query, you will not get the batch execution mode. In the words of the most favorite character of the Star Wars, which is Jar Jar Binks, you will be punished. So that's not a good news. So don't mention the lobs in your queries, people. Take them out somewhere else. Switching to, in practice, it's just I don't need precisely the worldwide importers. Hackathon with Hackathon data, and if I run the same, not the same, a little bit different query, what will happen? It's fast because it's in memory, but the table scan itself is running in the row execution mode. And I have pretty, 2 million rows. It's not bad. The compute scalar, though, will be So in this case, what we get is the injection of the batch execution mode when we run. But we will lose the table scans on the in-memory table. So it will never be as fast as the column store indexes. It won't. These are the major limitations. They're not really heavy. I don't consider them to be anything critical. But you got to know, OK? And use the heuristics. Once again, just find out. It gives you pretty exciting insight. No trivial plan optimization, well, just forcing. Ask Microsoft to consider. This is an awesome feature, but I might not like it, but I totally understand. It's purely a performance feature. There is nothing, nothing about the programmability. And on standard edition, don't forget, you can use the awesome, ever awesome column store indexes starting with 2016 Service Pack 1. OK? This one is the authorship of the fine gentleman Joe Sack, which I'm using. I should be making it bigger. Attribution, but this one is still very much true. Presented it last time. Are you using analytical queries? No. Well, you don't need a. I mean, if you're not analyzing anything, you don't need a batch mode on the Rowstore. Does it work requires a feature that not supported column store indexes? I can give you one, just one. And if you have time, I can spend the next hour talking about them. But we cannot replicate a table with clustered column store indexes. For example, you cannot replicate it. So you can't use the column store indexes. So feature not supported, yeah, you definitely need. Is your workload CPU bound? This is the key. I mean, if you are spending 25% of your CPU and you have a small box, why would you need a batch mode on the Rowstore? There is no need. It's a CPU spending improvement feature. It's not an I/O feature, right? So if on these three questions you answered yes, please consider using batch mode on the Rowstore indexes. And don't forget that the ever-awesome Azure SQL database has them. Are there any limitation on the edition? So apparently not, which means can you get it in basic? Probably not. Yeah, I think nobody tests the big amounts of data on the basic edition. But yes, go ahead.
So I understand that batch mode works primarily with parallel queries. Could you elaborate on that?
OK, so the question is, does the batch execution mode works primarily with the parallel queries? No, it's not. A huge change for column store indexes was made in 2016, allowing them to run with a single core. And you have seen some of the queries were running absolutely without those parallel arrows. No, there is no. I mean, if it's interesting, if the heuristic says, yeah, it should go forward. OK? Mm-hmm. So there is a kind of a virtualization, and Joe, please correct me if I'm saying it wrong. So you have the 4 milliseconds quantum, and you're not necessarily getting the same core, maybe in the execution. So it will be spread between the different cores. More questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. So thank you. Very, 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 very good question. So if we are running the column store indexes and we have, let's say, a dimension table, which there are lobs or some lobs, hopefully not, I'm exaggerating, but we don't have the column store indexes. Will there be a benefit of the batch mode for the Rowstore? Yes, it will run. My expectation, it should be on a reasonable size table. It should be running faster because I would expect that the table, I mean, the whole execution plan, will get the injection of the clustered columns or non-clustered columns or whatever. But once again, the iterator of scanning, it will not. It will get, without batch mode on the Rowstore, it will get starting with a join or a compute scalar, some significant iterator. But with batch mode on the Rowstore, I would expect that the index scan, the Rowstore index scan, would get the batch execution mode. So basically, you should get an improvement, not very big one, because it's always the 80-20. 80% of the query is really irrelevant. But thank you, really, really good question. More questions, please. Yes, there are. You, please.
Are there other differences between batch mode injection and the 2019 batch mode?
Okay. So the question is, are there any other potential differences between the old hacks and the real implementation? I think it's just we can sum up, because the team, they have so much to do, and why risking? They just, and I've seen between the different versions, some of the TPCH queries performing bad and then getting much better and getting wonderful, then falling back, and then you must be different, but what I do, I fail most of the time. And there are errors in my presentation and in my code. So it's a kind of a thing that I would say, yes, it's just the filters, how you push down, where you build a bitmap. It's thousands of internal things, just making one simple index scan work efficiently. Yes? Sorry, not laughing. I'm laughing at the sparse columns. So the question is, will batch execution mode work on the table with sparse columns? Joe? Okay, so I can tell you the answer for the sparse with column store is obviously no. Sparse is a kind of a compression, and column store is not comparable with sparse. But I would expect it not. But a great question. I will you give me material for write a blog post, people. Thank you. Yeah. So sparse, and I would say SharePoint, right? Most of the time. Yeah, you've got a huge amount of columns. 1,000. No. I would expect it not to work, quite honestly. Sorry for that. More questions? I leave you with a message of hope. Party people, you have a great summit, and the raw execution mode on biggest amount of data has passed away with the RTM release of the awesome SQL Server 2019. Thank you very much for your time and your patience.